Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we are going to get this Montero back on the road. So you might remember that we took this thing apart and took it all the way down because I originally jumped into this thinking I was just going to do a valve stem seal job. I knew the seals were bad, it was burning a lot of oil, and as I got into it, I realized they were bad, but I had bigger issues. That led me to pull the entire motor out to get it on the stand. I figured since I've got on the stand, I should go ahead and I should take this thing all the way down to the crank and rebuild it. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. Once I opened up the bottom of the motor, I realized this thing is actually in really good shape. The bearings are wearing really well. This motor has 240,000 miles on it, and these bearings look like they probably are still within spec. However, because I'm in here, I am going to replace them. The other thing I got to look at is the damage on the pistons. Specifically this one, the one that had me concerned. You can see all of that damage on the piston skirt where it's been rubbing up and down inside of the cylinder. So because of this damage, I sent the block and the heads off to the machine shop to have them fixed up. I had the block honed and the machine shop said it was going to be within spec, and I had both of the surfaces decked so that they would be totally flat, ready for new gaskets and new seals. Okay. All of the crankshaft bearings installed, I went ahead and I plastic gauged the crank. This is a process where you put a little piece of plastic on the crankshaft, you tighten everything down, and then you check to see how much space is actually in between the bearings and the crankshaft. That's to allow oil to get in between and lubricate the surfaces, so you got to make sure you have just the right amount. Plastic gauges are all on. Cradle also on. I know, except for it's too nice.
Ooh. That drives you up the...
Decommissioned.
That's okay, my coworker...
Is he cool?
He is actually pretty cool.
That's what you need. And you
He's
need some cool people in your life.
MET. It's
There
kind
you
of
go.
some of the guys you hang out with. Who you used to hang out with. I don't know.
Yeah. I still hang out with guys who have no idea what to do. After I did this, I did put assembly lube on everything and tighten it down for a final time. After replacing the damaged piston, I put new rings on and made sure they were within spec. While I had the heads out, I went ahead and did a quick valve job and also replaced those pesky valve stem seals. As you can see, these new heads are looking really good. That first cylinder does have a little bit of damage still, but it's not going to affect anything, and the mating surface is totally flat. Once the heads were torqued down to spec, I grabbed the accessories, threw them on real quick, and then it was time to drop the motor into the car. In case anyone is wondering, this is how I tow cars in when their motors are sitting on the hoist. So, car's obviously not going to move itself, but I've got my winch that goes on the front of the Montero most of the time, attached to an anchor point on the ground here that's drilled into the concrete about 6 inches. And then it's bolted, lag bolted on there. And then I've got this hooked up with some jumper cables to go to the battery. Actually, the battery is out of the car that I'm loading up right now. And then just click that over. You can use this and just walk the car in instead of having to push it. Pretty neat. Straight up. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, coming down again. Okay. Okay, got motor mounts? Okay, so I finally got the motor back in here and it's time to start it. Now, a few things I'm gonna do before I get it started. First thing was fill up the coolant. The way you do that is you pull these 2 plugs right here and you fill up your radiator until it starts to come out of those 2 plugs. Then you cap them off. That way the whole radiator system is bled. This is a really good system that Mitsubishi has, so I'm excited that they have that because it makes it way easier. So that should be good to go. But the other thing I need to do is there's no oil that's been pushed through this system yet. I've used assembly lube over everything that kind of rotates in the motor, so that's good. But I want to prime it for oil pressure. So the way I like to do that is I'm going to come around here, and this big plug right here is for your injectors, your fuel injectors. So if I unplug that, theoretically it won't fire, but it'll still rotate around. Because of the nature of this, I'm going to leave the spark plugs in. Some manufacturers will tell you to crank it over without the spark plugs in, but that's just too much of a pain with this, so it'll be all right. But I'm going to unplug that, give it a few cranks, and see if we can get this thing to have some oil pressure. Okay, so I'm done priming the system. Now I'm going to plug it in, and hopefully this thing fires up. I am super nervous. I've got about a month of work into this, about $1,000. I really don't want this to blow up. I don't have any other backup options, so I'm gonna plug it in. Fingers crossed this works. Lord, I pray that this would work the very first time. It would just run great. All right, fire in the hole.
Yay! Woo!
It's running. It's gonna do that. It's still got a little bit of a tick, and I'm really hoping that goes away with some time. It's mostly sounding pretty smooth, but there's just a little bit of a tick that's got me a little worried, but we'll kind of see as it warms up. Okay, so I'm in the car. It's still, I don't know if you can hear it. It still sounds a little bit like a diesel. It sounds a little bit like a 12 valve. But I've got heat and it's warmed up. I just cleared the codes and I've got my code reader with me. I'm gonna go on a test drive and try to bed in these rings and just fingers crossed that this thing holds together. All right, current temperature is about 10 degrees out here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave it in second gear and I'm gonna do some accelerations, pretty quick accelerations, and then slow it down with engine braking to try to bed those rings in both ways. Ooh, gotta check engine light. Seems like the throttle position is sticking. Oh, no throttle response. No throttle response. Okay, this is me going full throttle right now. Going almost nowhere. Something's definitely weird. I'm gonna pull over and check these codes. Seems like the throttle position might be off. It's definitely shaking. It's running rough. Put it in park and it went way up. idling at 2,000 RPM, foot's off the gas. Throttle, actuator control, range performance, bank 1. Okay, so I need to figure out what that is. Okay, so I just checked under the hood. Throttle position sensor is plugged in, but it's very likely that I screwed something up during my install, and to the point where it doesn't quite know where it's at. So right now, again, I'm driving back. I haven't shut the car off yet, giving it lots of gas, and nothing's happening. So it's possible that I screwed up and I need to do some kind of reset. I was revving it a little bit in the garage, and it seemed to be fine, but something's definitely off now. So before the car dies, I'm gonna head home, pull it in the garage, and see if I can do a little bit of digging on either the factory service manual or just maybe even try unplugging it and replugging it in, and see if I can get this thing to cooperate. Okay, I just went in the garage and I unplugged the throttle and reconnected it, and now I think I'm getting the RPM I would expect when I'm sitting here parked. It stopped sounding like a 12 valve. It is kind of lopey right here. It's a little bit lumpy, like it maybe has a slight misfire. Throttle response is good though. We're gonna go back on a test drive, see what we can find. Cleared the codes. Hopefully this one goes a little better. I feel like the other one we were doing good for a little bit, and then it kind of decided to crap out on me, so that's okay. We're just doing, we're figuring this out. So I'm just gonna leave it in first here. Okay, so far we've made it further than before. I'll get to about 3,500 and let it slow itself down. 3,500 again. It's feeling healthy, feeling peppy. There's that light turning off. All right, let's go take it on a main road. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. If it's gonna break, we might as well figure out when it's gonna break. So my methodology here is to break in the piston rings. I wanna warm them up, I wanna rev them a little harder, and then I wanna do some engine braking so that it has good vacuum on it for sealing in both directions. That's what my engine builder friends have taught me, so that's what I'm going with. Ooh, a little bit of slipping and sliding. Again, it's like 10 degrees outside. We just got a foot of snow or so. Turn on the fog lights. There we go. Thanks, Oxbeam. Temperature's looking good. Heat in the cab is feeling good. Let it slow way down. Even drop it into first. Really let it have it this time. Whew, this is nerve-wracking. All right, I'm gonna keep going on this test drive and keep watching the vitals and see how it goes. Get everything nice and hot. Put about maybe 10 miles on this thing and change the oil. Okay, I'm officially back from my test drive and things are looking up. So after I cleared the code and reconnected the throttle body, it was running really good. It's running pretty smooth. It's not quite as smooth as it was when I took it apart. The motor shakes just a little when I'm in park or at a stoplight, but it's all looking pretty good so far. So I've done the initial break-in. Now I just need to put miles on it and change oil. So I've done 15 miles. I'm gonna go ahead and drain the oil already, change out the filter, put another oil filter on and more oil, and I'm gonna run it for about 100 miles. Then I'm gonna do 500 miles and then 1,000 miles. And after that 1,000 mile mark, then I'll go for the full 3,000 or 5,000 mile interval. So that's just to clear all that crap out of there. I tried to be as clean as possible, but you just never know what's gonna be in there. So that's the plan for now. So I'm gonna let this sit overnight, let it cool down. It's still off-gassing a little bit, like the headers or the exhaust manifolds are still breaking in. There's all sorts of chemicals and stuff that are kind of baking off, and so it smells a little weird, but that's gonna go away. So I'm just gonna let it cool all the way down, and then I'll assess it in the morning, drain the oil, fill it up, and then I'm probably just gonna take this thing on a few little trips around town, keep the engine temps up, keep it moving, and break this thing in. So far, so good. So there you guys have it. This thing is back on the road and it is running great. I am super excited about how this turned out. I'm so excited to have it back and to know that now it's got a fresh motor that hopefully won't burn oil. So I'm gonna keep doing miles on it. I'm gonna keep changing the oil, but that wraps up this one. Thanks for coming with me, and I'll catch you on the next one.